What's up, guys? Carlton Flowers here with the Go Political channel, and today we're going to talk about a very sensitive topic, and I do apologize for the lateness of uploading this video. I'm trying to get a new podcast in every single day as we work to rebuild this channel and branch out into other topics outside of Dalton and Tiffany Henyard. So pretty much, unless you have been in a coma or under a rock, you probably know that something horrible happened last night. In fact, I was working in my body shop listening to live streams when I caught the news that Charlie Kirk had been shot. And it was about a few hours later that we got the confirmation that he had passed away in a hospital. And I did not expect that to happen because while I was listening, you were hearing reports saying that they got him to the hospital, that he was in critical condition. Then they said he was stabilized. The next thing you know, he passed away. So I get home and I get on social media, Facebook to be specific, and I can't even describe to you what I saw. It was a sad night for social media. And the variety of what was being posted was nothing that I could have ever imagined. There was such a wide variety of responses, while at the same time, it was very polarized. Very, very polarized. So you either had people that were eulogizing him as a saint, saying that he was a martyr for the Christian community, or you had people saying that an evil villain had passed away. And you can fill in the blanks of all of the names that were being attributed to him, similar to what people call Donald Trump. You know what the names are: racist, homophobic, xenophobic, fascist, Nazi, all of those popular terms that we hear. And so I was just, wow, blown away. And I wrote a story. I wrote a long, something the length of a blog post that I was going to post on Facebook. It took me a whole hour to write. And then I decided not to post it. I didn't even want to get involved because there was so much back and forth, so much fighting, and so many ugly things being thrown back and forth. I couldn't handle it. It was too much negative energy. But one thing I noticed was this. I noticed that there were two completely different descriptions of the man that Charlie Kirk was. So different that you would think that he had an evil twin. And I'm thinking to myself, while I'm reading these reactions, there's no way that we could be talking about the same guy. Where normally you'll hear opinions about a person that might vary just a little bit of good, a little bit of bad. Some people vibe with this individual, some don't, but no, This was night and day difference. And I thought, how is it possible that we could be that polarized and people could be describing the same person in such completely different terms, completely opposite of one another? And then something else that I noticed that was behind that. Set that aside. You had the two different ways that people were viewing Charlie Kirk. Here was the other interesting thing, and this really had me scratching my head. Both sides claim that they knew what the truth was in the situation. Everybody lays claim to the truth. So you had the people on the left where they were saying the truth is he's a racist, homophobe, Nazi, blah, 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 all of that good stuff. And they were throwing his own statements back up in his face about what he said about gun control. And they claimed this is the truth of Charlie Kirk. And then you had the people that were on the right that were stating this man stood up for what was right. And he was a Christian. He had morals and he had values. And he was all about educating and saving the country and turning the tide away from the destruction of the country to rebuilding our country based upon the values of what it was founded on. And they claimed that they had the true Charlie Kirk. So how is it that you can have the left and the right both lay claim to the truth, but then what they describe is polar opposite? That kind of tells me one thing. In my opinion, truth is an illusion. It's an illusion. And so is there an absolute truth, or is everything relativism? And the only way that I can make sense of any of this is to say that we as human beings don't have the ability to discern and figure out what absolute truth is. It's not possible as a human being. And so we grow up and we are given traditions passed down from generations. Things happen to us at a very young age. And by the time you're 5 or 6 years old, the majority of people, the beliefs are already set for the rest of their lives, for the rest of their entire lives. And so then we look at everything through a lens that is based upon the belief systems that were passed down to us and our experiences. So if somebody's born with a silver spoon in their mouth, they're rich and everything is just handed to them, that's a lens that they look at the world through. If someone was unfortunate enough to have to survive an abusive parent, someone who was beating them, or an alcoholic parent, or something much worse than that, a type of abuse that's a word that I don't want to say. Well, that's going to create a lens, and it's going to color everything for that individual of what they perceive for the rest of their life. Now, one thing that I'm thinking of is something that happened way back in 1986 at the University of Missouri, at Mizzou, where I went to college. Physics lab, Physics 176. And you're probably thinking, well, Carlton, what the heck does Physics 176 have to do with this whole dichotomy here, this polarization that we're talking about between the two warring political factions? Well, I'll tell you. Here's the thing. We did the double slit experiment. Now, science nerds, you already know what I'm about to say. But we did an experiment in physics lab where we proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that light was a particle, okay? And then we turned around and we proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that light's not a particle, but it's a wave of energy. I wouldn't have believed it had I not seen it, but we did it right there. Part one, the first half of the experiment, we saw the proof of the presence of photons of light. And then part two, the second half of the experience, we saw the presence of light energy as a wave, as it made an interference pattern on the film that collected the light after it was being shined through this slit. I saw it with my own eyes. I wouldn't have believed it otherwise. And I'm always watching videos about the two different theories of what light is made out of and how they contradict each other. So how is it that we can prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that light is two different things and they contradict each other? And that's in the physical realm. So if we can't even figure out or discern or observe what absolute truth is in the physical universe, how the hell are we going to be able to decide or discern or figure out what absolute truth is in psychology, in sociological terms, in philosophical terms, with the way that society operates? How does anybody know what the truth is? I don't know. But everyone seems to be dug in, claiming that only they have the truth, or just their political party or their race has the truth. And then we get all of the infighting because nobody can observe a situation without looking through the lenses that were created based upon their upbringing from childhood. I mean, it's just amazing. I was proud of a couple people that posted on Facebook where there's a young black woman that went to high school with my kids, and she had posted that she was very disgusted with what happened with the way that he lost his life. And she said that she had just recently, just a couple of years ago, started watching all of his videos. And she disagreed with some of the things that she said, but she really appreciated what he did. And in her opinion, She didn't think that he was a racist, misogynist, homophobe, and all of those things. And then that sparked off arguments where other people just piled on and said, how in the world can you not think that he's a complete racist, homophobe, disgusting, lowlife, on and on and on. You know the drill. Very few people are able to look at this situation with virgin eyes, without looking through the lens of their own personal belief systems that they hold to be true because they think that they have the absolute truth. I tell you what, I'm afraid to express my opinion on social media. I've watched Charlie Kirk a lot over the years, and I can say that there are things that I definitely disagree with him on, and there are things that I can agree with him. And on those things where I disagree, I can understand why he is arriving at those conclusions, why the argument even exists. And so does that make me think that he's a hateful person? No, he's a great debater and he makes people think. And I truly believe that a lot of the stuff that he says he knows was controversial. But he made those statements to make people think, to make people talk, so that we could break down these barriers and really sit down and have the hard conversations that we need to for people to make this society better. But in no way, shape, or form was I ready to see what happened on that video, and I can't wipe it out of my mind. I thought it was awful. I almost cried. It made me sick to my stomach, and I'm really sad to see people celebrating this. Something that awful. I don't care if he was a racist and a bigot and a homophobe. I don't care. That's still not something I would wish upon anyone. And I don't think a death sentence is appropriate for someone speaking things, even if they are, for the most part, offensive. And I don't think that he intended to offend. But then certain people think, well, he got what he deserved, and they threw it back up in his face about his comments about gun control and gun laws. And I thought that was a low blow. I mean, we couldn't even get the man in a casket before people were using this as cannon fodder for political arguments, using it for ammo. I'm like, good Lord, can we get the guy out of the morgue and at least wait until he's shipped home? Wait till they have the funeral before we completely act a fool like this. And then another thing I noticed is this, that people tend to have to give excuses before that they could say that they condemned what happened. They had to say, well, I don't agree with him and I don't like him, but it was wrong. You shouldn't have to say that. It's wrong, period. There's no reason to have to explain or put a pre-qualifier before you state that what we had to see happen was under no circumstances something that we should tolerate or accept or expect to happen in this country where we are supposed to be living under free speech. Free speech. But now we have to worry about losing your life for speaking what you believe to be true. And I tell you what, there are people who are racist. There's a person I'm going to do a video on. I've been kind of kicking around the idea of covering this. That's the video right there. Actually, I'm not going to play that video. But Gaddis, I can't remember what her last name is, but some of you might know who I'm talking about. Her last name is Gaddis. Young white female, about 25 years old, who unfortunately is just an all-out racist and takes every opportunity she can to throw black people under a bus, to put us all in one group. And in her opinion, she thinks that there's nothing good about the black race. And she, like I said, takes every opportunity that she can to disparage the entire black community. Now, even when somebody as vile and hateful as this Gaddis young lady, we do have free speech. I would like to debate someone like that, but I would not ever want to see someone, even with as foul mouth as what she has, to suffer something like what we saw with Charlie Kirk. No, I don't. It's more important that we love one another, forgive one another, and accept why people are the way they are. Maybe something happened early in her childhood, which made her the way that she is right now. It's not an excuse. I'm not excusing being a bigot, because there's no excuse for that. But we certainly don't want to start promoting the idea that the death penalty is acceptable for people that don't share our political views. It's insane. And then something else that I thought about was this. You know, we always hear, especially on the left, where they say no one is above the law, right? No one is above the law. But then they're dancing in the streets that Charlie Kirk lost his life, that someone cut his life short. So are they not above the law when it comes to violating the law just because someone is speaking things that go against their belief system? And then the other phrase, we know what it is, due process. Now you see the people on the left fighting for due process for illegal aliens, even the ones that have committed heinous crimes, right? We got to have due process, due process. So how is it that we fight for due process for illegal aliens, and some of which are committing these heinous crimes, but then we celebrate in the streets and we gloat on social media when Charlie Kirk's life was so abruptly ended in the most brutal, horrific way? Where was his due process? Even if he was a racist, homophobe, fascist, Hitler, dictator, supporting, you know the drill. Even if all those things were true, and even if he was guilty of spreading evil, where is his due process? When did he get the chance to be convicted in a court of law of breaking some type of law? Where was the due process? And have you thought about that while you're celebrating his death? It's just something to think about. Now, we might dig into this further, because one of the original reasons why I started this channel is to expose the biases, these philosophies that people have based on the control of political cults, both on the right and on the left, which feed into situations like what we just had to witness and see the horrible turn of events from yesterday, which I don't know if I'll ever get over that. This might be one of the things that I can say was as awful as what, say, my parents had to go through in watching JFK be assassinated, or Martin Luther King. I was too young when that happened to really understand what was going on. I don't have any memories of it. But I can probably tell you that this could be our JFK of this generation. I don't remember ever seeing anything as horrible as what I saw on that video. Now, I'd like to know your opinion. Post it below. Do you think that there is absolute truth? Post it below and let me know. And do you think human beings in the third dimension, okay, for those of you who are Einstein buffs, science nerds, you'll understand what I mean by this. Is it possible for we human beings in the third dimension to understand absolute truth when we are not yet in the fourth dimension? Is it possible for a third dimensional being to be able to observe absolute truth? Or is everything relative? Are you a believer in relativism or absolute truth? I'd love to know. So post it in the comments below. And in the meantime, I just hope everybody can do what Rodney King said. Why can't we all just get along? Tick the notification bell, like and subscribe, and I'll keep trying to pump out the information and a sneak preview on something I got coming your way. I've dug up some corruption stories from Chicago that will blow your mind. I'm going to be so bold as to say that your politicians in Chicago are bought by and controlled by the gangs. Yep, I said it. And I'm going to share with you an article from 2011, okay, so that I don't put myself in jeopardy of talking about the current politicians. I'm going to show you something from 14 years ago that proves that point, which means that it's still going on today. That's all I got for this one. This is Carlton, and I am out.